Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching. Your Notre Dame live stream will begin soon. Thanks for watching.
Good evening, friends. Welcome. I'm Professor Carter Sneed. I'm the director of the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture here at the University of Notre Dame, where I'm a professor of law. And we are delighted that you could join us for our first ever winter conference. We usually host a fall conference, as you all know. This is our winter conference. And this year's theme for the winter conference, taking its inspiration from St. Teresa of Calcutta, is "We belong to each other." I'm going to say a few brief words about the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture, a little bit about this year's theme, and then I'll introduce our evening's keynote speaker. The mission of the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture here at Notre Dame is to share the richness of the Catholic moral and intellectual tradition, both here on campus at Notre Dame, as well as in the broader global public square as Notre Dame. And we do this through four main avenues. First, of course, we're a university. Our first pillar, our first focus is academic research and programming, of which our annual fall conference has become the centerpiece, along with several award-winning publications, book series with our wonderful colleagues at the University of Notre Dame Press, led by the wonderful Stephen Rinn, the director of Notre Dame Press. Second, at the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture, we focus our work on student formation. The students are our lifeblood here at the University of Notre Dame, and serving our student population is an essential function of what we do at the DeNicola Center. The flagship aspect or element of our student formation is our 300-member Sorin Fellows program, named, of course, for Notre Dame's founder, Father Sorin, who sought to not just educate the young, but also to make the university a great force for good in the world. And one of the principal agents of that force for good are our students, both when they're here and when they leave us. So our Sorin Fellows program provides special opportunities for mentoring and internships and research support for undergraduate, graduate students, and professional students at the university. Third, we have a Culture of Life initiative. We're the most energetic and robust locus of Notre Dame's institutional commitment to building a culture of life and a civilization of love. And we seek to do that for all members of the human family, born and unborn, through teaching, research, service, and witness in the global public square. And finally, the fourth focus of our work here at the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture is our Mission Stewardship Initiative, in which we at the DeNicola Center support the university's goals of recruiting, hiring, and retaining world-class faculty and graduate students who are passionate about our distinctive Catholic mission. The fall conference, as I mentioned, is the centerpiece of our academic programming in the course of the year. As you all know, those of you who are joining us from years past, It's an institution. It is an event every year that brings about 1,000 people to campus to hear interdisciplinary talks, engage in conversation, and to continue to nurture the friendships, both old and new, that have emerged over the years. And we were disappointed, of course, because of the pandemic, that we couldn't have this event in person. It's an important event for all of us and all of our friends from around the world who come and receive sort of nourishment of being in conversation with one another, supporting one another, and hearing really interesting conversations and participating as well. However, our wonderful staff, led by Margaret Cabanis, who directs all of our academic programming, and our wonderful communications director, Ken Hellenius, along with the rest of the staff, who I'll talk about at the end of the conference. And we all put our heads together, along with Father John Paul Kimes, and put together this virtual version. It's not a substitute, of course, but it'll at least hold us over until we can be together again. I don't need to tell everybody that it's been a tough year with the global pandemic, civil unrest, and even most recently the violence that we saw in our own nation's capital. People are depressed. They have anxiety. They're polarized. They're angry. They're disoriented. And we thought that nothing would be more appropriate to make our theme this year the theme of that was so beautifully stated by Saint Teresa of Calcutta in her phrase that she said, if we have no peace, and at the moment it seems like we are in need of peace. If we have no peace, it's because we have forgotten that we belong to one another. And it's our mutual dependence, it's our interrelationships, it's our intersubjectivity, it's our embeddedness in webs of relationships and networks of uncalculated giving and graceful receiving that help us to sustain us as human beings, but also to teach us what we're supposed to be, which is to say, to become the kind of people who make the good of others our own good, without hope or expectation of anything in return for ourselves. In a sense, to be friends in the deepest and most authentic sense. We thought that what we needed this year was to remind ourselves that we belong to each other. We're not tribes. We're not balkanized. We're not radical individuals. We're not partisans. We actually, we love each other. We belong to each other. As Dorothy Day said, that I only love God as much, I'm paraphrasing, as much as I love the person that I like the least. We think that that's the spirit of this conference. We've chosen in our characteristic interdisciplinary fashion to tackle this question of belonging to one another, to remind ourselves, to recall that we belong to another across a variety of contexts. Today, we heard interesting and beautiful talks and conversation about racial justice and the Catholic social tradition. We heard talks about healthcare. We heard talks about the poor. And tonight, we will be hearing from a wonderful leader of our church talking about the question of what we owe to the migrant. We are honored this evening to be joined by Archbishop José Gómez of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, who is also the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, to consider this question of what we owe to the migrant. Archbishop Gómez is the prelate for the largest Catholic diocese in the country and currently serves as president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, as I mentioned. He's a native of Monterrey, Mexico, and studied at the National University of Mexico before receiving his doctorate in sacred theology from the University of Navarra in Spain. He was appointed auxiliary bishop of Denver in 2001, Archbishop of San Antonio in 2004, and Archbishop of Los Angeles in 2010. In 2013, he wrote the groundbreaking work, Immigration and the Next America, Renewing the Soul of Our Nation, in which he called immigration one of the human rights tests of our generation and a defining historical moment in America. With that, I'm delighted to turn the floor over to Archbishop José Gómez. Archbishop.
Thank you, Carter, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for the invitation to be with all of you this evening. So it's great to be with all of you tonight, even though, unfortunately, we are still forced these days to gather virtually. In the spirit of your conference theme, I want to start my talk tonight by telling one of my favorite stories from the life of Saint Mother Teresa. It goes like this. One day, Mother Teresa found an old and very sick woman lying on the streets of Calcutta. The woman was covered in open sores. She was in a lot of pain. And many of her wounds were infected. Mother Teresa took her in and started cleaning her up. The whole time, this woman was yelling at her, cursing at her. At one point, the woman cried out, "Why are you doing this? People don't do things like this. Who taught you?" Mother Teresa replied simply, "My God taught me." Now, that made the woman calm down a little. So she asked, "Who is this God?" And Mother Teresa replied again very simply, "You know my God. My God is called love." I'm sure that some of you have heard this story before. It teaches a beautiful lesson about compassion and respect for human dignity. But I wanted to share this little story tonight because it gets to the heart of our responsibilities as Christians. This story tells us two important truths. It tells us who God is, and it tells us who we are as human beings. As Christians, we worship a God who has revealed himself as love. And as Christians, we know that human beings are made in the image of this God, in the image of love. We are created out of love, and we are made to love as Jesus loved, and as Mother Teresa and saints love. Whenever I hear this story, I am reminded of that beautiful saying from St. Augustine: "You see love, you see the Trinity." This is the truth about God, the truth about the human person. I have to say that I have been working for immigration reform and advocating for migrants and refugees for at least 20 years now. And I have come to see that questions like, what do we owe to the migrant, are really part of these deeper questions about God and about the human person. Unless we know these truths, we cannot understand our Christian commitments for immigrants and refugees, for the poor, the unborn, the imprisoned, the sick, the environment. Unless we know these truths, we cannot understand how to create a society that will be good for human beings. Right now, in the West, nations, corporations, international agencies, and other actors are trying to build a global economic and political order that does not need to rely on beliefs about God or traditional religious values and principles. But what we are finding is that when we lose this Judeo-Christian idea of a God who creates the human person in his image, then we lose the basis for all the noble principles and goals that we have in our society. Without belief in a creator who establishes values, we have no authority higher than our own policies and procedures. We are left with no solid foundation for our commitments to human dignity, freedom, equality, and fraternity. To put our challenge in its simple terms, unless we believe that we have a Father in heaven, there is no necessary reason for us to treat one another as brothers and sisters on earth. This is one of the underlying concerns in Pope Francis' latest encyclical, Fratelli Tutti. For me, I read this encyclical as a kind of missionary work. The Pope is writing to evangelize. He's writing to explain the moral implications of the gospel for a world that has become aggressively secularized. At the heart of the Holy Father's appeal is that simple, beautiful truth that we have been talking about, that God is love. that He's our Father and we are His children, that He calls us to form one human family and to live together in love as brothers and sisters. As we know, the condition of migrants and refugees has been one of the key moral concerns of this pontificate. And it is true. Forced migration, mass movements of population is one of the signs of our times. Not since World War II has the world faced this kind of refugee crisis. The United Nations says that right now there are roughly 80 million people in the world who have been forcibly displaced. As a polite expression for a violent reality. These are people who have been driven from their homes by war and persecution, by social chaos and economic distress, and they are living on their own. They are exploited by human smugglers, and some of them are being sold into slavery. And I don't know you know, but about half of these 80 million are children. And of course, their living conditions have been made even more challenging now because of the pandemic and the closing of borders. But the global refugee crisis, like so many of the troubles in the world, is more than a failure of politics or diplomacy. It's a failure of human fraternity and solidarity. At the end, it's a failure of love. You probably remember how Pope Francis went to Lampedusa in the Mediterranean for his first trip outside of Rome when he became the Pope. So there, as we know, there are so many Africans that have suffered and died trying to get to Europe. Pope Francis said in his trip to Lampedusa, today, no one in our world feels responsible. We have lost a sense of responsibility for our brothers and sisters. In this globalized world, he said, we have fallen into globalized indifference. And my dear friends, that is our challenge and our mission as Christians and the Church, to respond to that reality. And our nation's response to the demands of refugees and migrants requires obviously prudential judgment about such things as national identity and national security, the effects on the economy and the fabric of society. And these considerations are spelled out in the Church's social doctrine, as you know. But there is no question, I think, that what God expects from each one of us as followers of Jesus Christ is to respond to this crisis, loving our brothers and sisters. What do we owe to migrants and refugees? We owe them our love. And love means remembering that they are souls, not statistics. That they are men and women and children with dreams and hopes, not different than any of us. Every immigrant and refugee is a child of God, made in His image. Every one of them has rights and dignity that can never be denied. And that's true whether they are in this country legally or not. And that's true whether they are eligible for asylum under our laws or not. We all are brothers and sisters. And we need to treat others as we want to be treated. And yes, as faithful citizens, we need to work to ensure that our nation is welcoming and generous. That we never close our hearts or turn our backs on people in need. But, my dear friends, in my opinion, we have an even more urgent duty in this moment. As we have been discussing, our society has lost its bearings. We are living in an aggressively secular society, that has forgotten the truth about God and the truth about the human person. This crisis of truth is the root cause of the pain and hardship that we find in so many of our neighbors' lives. It is the cause of many injustices in our society. But you and I, as Christians, we know the truth, my dear friends. We have an urgent duty in this moment to bear witness to the truth. I will say especially in the light of the violence last week in our nation's capital and the deep polarization and divisions in our country. We need to tell our neighbors about the God who is love. We need to tell them the good news that we are all children of God, that there is greatness to human life, that every one of us is created in God's image, and that we got given rights and responsibilities and called to a transcendent destiny. This beautiful truth about God and the human person is the key to healing and reconciliation. It's the way forward, the way we can come together as one nation under God. As Saint Mother Teresa taught us, our God is called love, and He calls us to love. By our love, by how we serve our neighbors, by how we care for one another, especially the weak and the vulnerable, we can change our country, and we can change the world. We can help our neighbors to know this God and to know His love. So thank you for listening, my dear friends, and now I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much, Archbishop, for those words. And as the moderator, I'll take the moderator's prerogative to ask a few questions of my own before we open it up to the broader audience. I was very struck by your comments, your very rich and interesting comments this evening, echoing a theme that you've explored elsewhere, and that's the importance of anchoring our thinking about how we treat others in what St. John Paul II and novelist Walker Percy have described as anthropology, an account of who we are. You say the root of our crisis is that we've forgotten who we are, the truth about human beings and about God, and what constitutes human flourishing. And I'm not an expert on the issue of migrants and refugees and the issues that you've been working on for so many decades. But in my own field of American public bioethics, this is also the same problem. This is the fundamental issue. If you get the question of what a person is wrong, and then you're going to get the question of what we owe to each other wrong, and you're not going to be able to construct laws, policies, and practices that are wise, just, and humane. And as you point out in your wonderful remarks, we as Catholics have an anthropology. And in fact, it's a very beautiful anthropology that's attractive and draws people in if they're prepared to hear it. And that is that as you said, every human being is made in the image and likeness of God, has matchless worth, is unrepeatable, and from conception to natural death is owed unconditional love and care. And that's true of unborn children. That's true of people who have fled their homes from conflicts, displaced peoples, refugees, migrants, and so forth. And of course, to love God the right way, we have to love our neighbor as we do ourselves. So my question is, given your vast experience on the questions of immigration and related topics, displaced persons and so forth, how does this question of anthropology play out? Obviously, we have the truth of the matter, which is we're made in the image likeness of God, and a lot follows from that. What are the visions of human identity that we're contending with when we're debating these issues, either with our neighbors or even in the political and policy space?
Well, Carter, it seems to me that the main challenge that we have is to open our hearts to the people that are coming, to the migrants and refugees. I think historically in the United States, that's the reality of the United States. I mean, the United States is a country of immigrants. So unfortunately, in the last years, it's been a challenge to understand the movements of people. as I said, the numbers are just, I think part of the problem is that the numbers are overwhelming. So many people moving. So I think that's the root of the challenge that we have in order to see that those people that are coming in great numbers are our brothers and sisters. Obviously, something that can help us to understand how challenging it is for those people coming in is that everybody, I think as we think of why this thing is happening, I think to go to your question is, I think the problem that we have is that we ask ourselves why these people are coming here. And I think of the society in which we live. I don't know if I'm responding to your question.
No, that's very much responsive to my question, and it leads actually very nicely into the next question, which is to say, and I think this relates to what you're talking about, which is the tendency of folks not to see their neighbor in the people that are seeking seeking refuge here in our country, whether to live and work or whether to flee conflict. You used a phrase that Pope Francis has used, which is the crisis of globalized indifference. Pope Francis, as you quoted, said, "Today, no one in our world feels responsible. We have lost a sense of responsibility for our brothers and sisters in this globalized world. We have fallen to globalized indifference." And you just said a moment ago, and I think, and it seems exactly right to me, that the issue is to figure out a way to shift our perspective from feeling threatened or asking why are these folks coming here, instead seeing a brother and sister in need of hospitality, in need of care, in need of support. And so, do you agree with me that one of the problems generally, not just with immigration, but with many other kinds of similarly situated issues, the failure really is a failure of moral imagination? That is, it's a failure to recognize our brothers and sisters when they come to us in different forms. It's true when they come to us in the womb. It's true when they come to us as migrants. It's true when they come to us as the poor, as the convict on death row. How should we? And you're not just a bishop. You're I mean, it's part of being a bishop. You're a shepherd. I mean, your experience as a pastor and your experience as a leader of your flock in Los Angeles and elsewhere where you've served. How can we, the laity, cultivate our moral imagination so we can better understand that these are our brothers and sisters? How can we? What are some strategies that we can help remind ourselves of these connections that we have, that we can forget when we get caught up in our own interests?
Sure. In a practical way, the things change dramatically when we get to know each other. I think one of the problems that we have is that the immigrants coming, they have another culture, and even it happens, in the United States or in any country, in different parts of the country, there are different cultures. So my first response to your question is getting to know each other, not being afraid that. I think it happens at the university at the beginning. The ones that are coming for the first year, they are nervous, and who are all of these people that are here? But then they get to know each other and things change. So I think the first practical thing that we need to do is get to know each other. It happens in neighborhoods, happens in schools, happens in work, everywhere. So same thing with the immigrants that are moving from one place to another. In that way, we discover, hey, this person is exactly like I am. Different age, different color of the skin, or different. Some can be fans of Notre Dame, or others can be fans of USC or something.
Well, I don't know about that, Archbishop. That's going a little bit too far, I think. We have to draw lines somewhere, and I think that the USC Notre Dame line is probably a good one to draw.
I know. Anyway, that's the first thing. Culture is another thing. I think it is important to understand that there are different cultures. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's, human relationships, just getting to, and earlier, John Cavadini and Ernest Morel, our colleagues, were talking about racial justice through the lens of Catholic social teaching. And there's a kind of temptation to systemic reforms, and then you feel like you can't do anything. But in fact, these begin with human relationships. They begin with one-to-one, neighbor to neighbor, getting to know someone, getting to care about them, serving them, and being served. Now,
I think let me just say one thing that it might be helpful to all of us. Here in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, we have Mass in 42 languages. So we have people from all over the world. And I think it's beautiful to see Catholics from all over the world practicing their faith and participating in the life of the church. So that helps us to understand that even those immigrants and we all are immigrants. So we are, as we are talking about, so that's another thing that can help us.
No, that's a very nice point. The liturgy itself, and we all, I think we experience when we travel, we have the privilege of traveling and going to Mass in other countries and other cultures. It's the sensation of being connected to people from completely different backgrounds, because we're all participating in the same Mass, is a very unifying experience for us Catholics. Which leads me to another question. You talk about the root of our crisis and the pathway forward is that we've forgotten about God, that we have not, that we're looking to other sources for guidance. And in fact, what we need to do is to share the truth about God, who is love, with our neighbors. And so my question is, how do we teach people about the God who is love, that we need to tell them the good news that we're all children of God, to use your words, and that there's greatness to human life, and that everyone's created in God's image, endowed with God-given rights and responsibilities? We live in a polarized, diverse society, pluralistic. Not everyone agrees with us. There's suspicion among different factions and different balkanized factions among our even in our own states, in our country. How do we start to try to share the good news about who God is love, and what that means for our lives with those who perhaps don't share our first principles?
I think, as I was saying, the beautiful example of Saint Mother Teresa, just going out and try to serve people, help people, try to talk to them, try to listen to them, that kind of way of doing it. Everything has to do with service, and making life better for others helps us to really show them that there is something else. It's not just the fact that I'm in this neighborhood, or that I have this personality. That's important, but it's more important that they see the people out there, that we care about who they are, and that we try to help them in any possible way that we can. So for me, that's what makes the difference. And for the one of the big challenges in the reality of immigration, or the perception of immigrants, is that there is the impression that the immigrants can come here just to take care of this country. How can I say it? To benefit themselves for what happens in this country, which is true. It's a beautiful country. There is jobs, there is prosperity there. But at the same time, they come to help, to serve. So I'm sure that you all have the experience of dealing with immigrants that are just making a huge difference in our country. You look at the health workers all over the country. A lot of them are from other countries, immigrants, and they are dedicating themselves to serve. So if we, for me, how to share the beautiful reality of God's love is loving others in a simple way. You don't have to, do something extraordinary, but just saying, hey, hi, how are you? Or, looking for the way to serve one another. I think that's the way to do it. That's what Pope Francis talked about, the church going out. So la iglesia en salida, he says in Spanish. So we are going out, trying to be with people and with our example, with our way that we do things, attract them to the church.
That's a very beautifully said. I mean, it does seem to me to be the case that people, especially people who are prepared not to listen to another person, who have sort of an adversarial, argumentative posture, especially as we see on social media, that it's to love them unconditionally first before you start trying to make a discursive case for God or the Trinity or making theological arguments. Loving them first and loving them unconditionally seems to me to be not just the right thing to do, but also the very way to soften people's hearts and prepare them to hear the beautiful words of the gospel. And as you said in your remarks, that people should know us by how well we love other people. That's how they should know that we're Catholics and Christians. The last question for me before we open it up to the larger audience: how can you're the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops? How can the Usccb participate in this process of evangelization, not just with respect to migrants, but in terms of changing hearts and minds in this perilous moment that we find ourselves in the United States? What do you see the role of the Usccb being, and how can we, the laity, help?
Obviously, we have some priorities at the Usccb, and I think one of the priorities that we are in the plans that we have for this year and for the future is helping people to understand and see the beauty of the Eucharist, celebration of Mass and also the Eucharist, understanding really well how extraordinary that is, that God wants to be with us in the Blessed Sacrament. There is a sense out there that especially the younger generation do not understand the importance of the Eucharist. And the statistics show that people don't really believe that the real presence, a number of people don't believe in the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist and things like that. So that's I think, a priority for us, the bishops of the United States, especially now that as a consequence of the coronavirus pandemic, it was difficult for people to participate in celebration of Mass in person. So now I think that somehow this is, it seems to me that it's clear that God wants us to really help people to understand that. There are so many other things, like we have a beautiful pastoral letter on how to fight the horrible situation of racism in our country. So that's another thing that the bishops of the United States are totally committed. Here in California, the bishops, we are committing ourselves to go deeper in that understanding of that pastoral letter and put into practice, starting with ourselves and then going to the priests and the parishioners and everybody. So things like that are part of the priorities of the Usccb, and obviously the church happens, as we know, in the parishes and with the lay faithful and the priests and deacons and religious. So I think that will be a big help for us. And if we do that, we talk to them, to our brothers and sisters out there, about the beauty of the presence of God in the Eucharist. And we talk to them about the beautiful reality that we are all, as we were saying, children of God. So that's the Usccb can talk about those basic things, but then the lay faithful are the ones really making it happen in the parishes.
Thank you very much for that. The first question from our audience is very much connected to what you just said. The question is, and this, I think, drawing upon your experience as being the Archbishop of the largest archdiocese in the country, what should be the most pressing responsibility of Catholic parishes particularly in communities such as Los Angeles, with respect to the treatment of migrants and refugees? How should parishes prioritize teaching and evangelizing parishioners about important topics, or providing services? What perhaps are some successful practices that you all have implemented in Los Angeles? What are lessons learned from your experiences there at the parish level?
Obviously, the first thing is to pray for one another. You know, I think it's important to pray for the immigrants and refugees, and in general in the world, as I was talking about, that people understand that the immigrants and refugees are our brothers and sisters. And secondly, here in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, we are trying to help all the the reality is that there are many immigrants in our country that have no legal documentation. So, and we try to be there for them and helping them to find a way to make their presence here legal, to go through the whole process. So that's a great service that we can do in our parishes and in the different dioceses all over the country, just to help them to see what is your situation, how can we help you. And then obviously just to be with them and welcome them. And one thing that we are trying to do in every single parish in the Archdiocese is to make sure that in every parish there are the different cultures represented in the parish council, for example, or in the celebration of Mass. There is not just one Mass for one culture, one Mass for another culture, that we are, at least during certain celebrations, be together as a family. Those are little practical things that we are doing. So
that last thing that you said is particularly interesting, because you could imagine a self-sorting process where folks of certain cultures would gravitate towards their own Mass time, their own community activities. And it's wonderful that you all encourage them to interact with each other and to get to know each other, as you said, because that's important in terms of the sort of possible.
I tell you, Gary, it's a big challenge for the pastors, because every culture, they want their own little thing. So I think it's important for us to break that. And okay, I mean, usually you have Mass in your language and in your culture, but then let's be together as the family of God in that specific parish. So
another question from our audience relates to the complexities of discussing and debating these issues among Catholics, right? You alluded to prudential questions that people sometimes disagree about in terms of immigration and public policy and law in that particular area. What advice do you have for how to have those arguments, how to think through those prudential questions while remaining in communion with one another and not becoming adversarial, not becoming hostile?
I think just following what the Church teaches. One of the big challenges is the protection of our borders. I mean, obviously the Church teaches that every country has the right to protect their borders. There's nothing wrong with that. So in the United States, in the last, at least 20 years or 30 years, it's been a challenge. But I think that's what the bishops of the United States are trying to promote immigration reform that acknowledges that we have to find a way that the people that come to this country become legal. They come legally, not illegal. So I think that helps people to calm down and think, let's get it done. So obviously I'm a little frustrated because I've been trying to get that for a long time. So that's one thing that is important. Then together with that, I think it's important to welcome people, as I've been saying, in their cultures. I think if we that's another, we want everybody to be like us. So when it is a little different, they speak another language, or they look in a different way, or, so we have to be a little flexible with the immigrants and help them to become like us, in the good sense of that, understanding what is the culture of the United States and how they can be integrated. So if we understand there is the reality of the church acknowledging the countries need to protect their borders. There is also an understanding that we all have to be integrated in this beautiful culture. And then the third thing will be that we all our biggest desire is that people love God. So I think those three things, in my view, can be very useful. When those things happen, then there is more, then immigration is not a problem, is something good.
That's very, very nice. Thank you. So you mentioned a moment ago that you've been working, and obviously the Usccb is engaged in Capitol Hill and in politics, trying to make the case for the common good and human dignity across a variety of contexts. And as we all know, as Catholics, our view of the human person and the common good does not fit neatly into American political categories. There's a lot of it's pretty countercultural to hold the views that we do as coherent as I believe that they are. It's hard to find a home in the American political landscape.
That's correct.
Could you tell us what's the strategy for the Usccb in terms of trying to build coalitions to try to persuade folks on, let's focus just on the question of immigration. I mean, I've got my great friend Lauren McCormick lobbies for you all, and Michelle Gress. They're fantastic people, known them for a long time. They do a great job. How do we as Catholics engage with political actors in a way that preserves our integrity, but also makes the case, it puts us in position to be persuasive to make the case for the common good on these different important questions?
I think what for us the bishops is a challenge is to communicate with people, because obviously the secular media, they portray things in one way or the other. So I think it's important for Catholics to know what are really the positions of the Church or the Catholic Church in the United States through the Usccb or to each one of the dioceses. Once that we understand what the Church is trying to do, like just looking for immigration reform according to the basic truths of the Catholic faith, not opening the borders for everybody, or so, or in the issue of refugees, it's been a big challenge because we think we have too many refugees in the United States, and Pope Francis says nations with economic possibilities should be more welcoming to the. So my point is that if we Catholics know better, what is it exactly that the Committee on Migrants and Refugees is trying to do with the administration about this specific issue? The famous DACA, the piece of legislation, the kids that were brought here by their parents when they were little, and they are not legal. So what is the Church trying to do that? So in that way, when we will know a little better, and we'll be happy to share that with everybody, we are trying to do that, but it's difficult to communicate with the parishioners in the parishes. So my point is, if to answer the question, if you know better what the Usccb or the diocese is doing to address the issues of immigrants and refugees, then you're going to join it right away, because it really follows the teachings of the Catholic Church.
That's very nice. Thank you. So another one of our undergraduate students has a question, Clayton. He's a Soren Fellow of the De Nicola Center. He asks, in addition to welcoming migrants here, do you think the United States has responsibility to work to address the issues that are driving migrants from their homelands in the first place, understanding that immigration is oftentimes a response to a kind of brokenness? How should we think about our obligations, not just to address the needs of those migrants who are fleeing conflicts and crises in their homelands, to try to be helpful as a matter of foreign policy, I suppose, is what Clayton is asking. How should we think about that?
I absolutely. I think the United States should continue to try to make life better for everybody else all over the world. I mean, we are the leaders in the world. We are leaders in the world, so we need to try to do that. We, the church, we are also trying to do that, helping people in their countries. You know, we have CRS, Catholic Relief Services, that is helping millions of people all over the world. We also have the bishops of the United States, especially help different countries in Africa, different countries in Latin America, helping people to develop their ministries over there, just to the teachings of the church and evangelization and all that. And then many parishes all over the country are trying to do that, helping the people in different countries to really address the needs that they have. Obviously, it's a big challenge. Just thinking about 80 million people moving, as I was talking about. But I totally agree that the United States, being a leader in the whole world, we need to help people in their countries. And as I was saying before, people, that's what they want to do. They want to start in their countries, have a job, have the means to survive, and provide the children with a good education. So whatever the United States can do, I think is very important for the whole world.
Thank you.
I think there are also some specific, like the Jesuits have some service. I think Notre Dame probably has something going to different places in college. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have one final question from our audience, and that is, what are you most optimistic about in terms of the future, the near term and the long-term future, with respect to the church working to serve migrants and to change hearts and minds insofar where necessary on those questions, and to facilitate a charitable and loving debate over how best to proceed to serve our neighbor and to love our neighbor as we love ourselves?
Well, I'm optimistic that I think more and more people are understanding the reality of the migrants in the United States, the people that immigrate to the United States. I think just look at the statistics of people being in favor of immigration reform. So I'm very optimistic that the DACA people are going to somehow be able to stay in our country because they grew up here and they are went to school here and they really totally they are Americans. You know? So I'm also hopeful that the different programs that we call the TPS, that people from Central America that came here several years ago and other countries, they can stay here. I'm also optimistic about refugees coming in a systematic way, organized way that is in conformity with the needs of our country. So I think, and I think everything depends, in my personal opinion, on how we Catholics understand the issue and support the reasonable movement of peoples. One thing that helps me to be optimistic is just think of the Holy Family. How the Holy Family, they had to emigrate to Egypt, for a persecution, and they were able to return to their country. So that's a beautiful image that I always have that helps me to think, yes, immigration is possible. And then we can welcome them, we can help them, and maybe a lot of them will go back to their countries just to share in their countries the beauty of our Catholic faith. So I hope that in the next few years, we can have that immigration reform. We all need to be together. And sometimes it's a challenge, as I was saying, to communicate with one another, because they seem to think that, oh, the immigrants are coming and they are taking our places. They are not. I mean, we want them to participate in a reasonable way in our society. So I'm very optimistic, and I'm praying a lot, and I think we all participate, and it's going to be successful.
Archbishop, we certainly appreciate you, and we will pray for you and your work, both as Archbishop of Los Angeles and President of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been a great pleasure having this conversation with you, and you're a wonderful witness to the good news and the gospel of life and the gospel of Christ. So thank you so much. Friends, I'd like to thank Archbishop once again for spending his evening with us, and to all of you for joining us. We're looking forward to 2 more full days of conversation, and hope you will tune in beginning tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern with a discussion on what we owe those with disabilities. You can find the full conference schedule on our website, ethicscenter.nd.edu/winter conference. And we hope you'll follow along on social media with the hashtag WinCon21. Thank you all for joining us. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow and the next day as well. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you all.